And we are live for another episode of the NASCAR Fantasy Podcast, Dirt Bristol edition. Once again, we are going to review everything that happened in the Dirt Bristol race, talk some more fantasy exiting the race, review the power rankings from last week, adjust them a little bit going into the next race at Martinsville in a couple weeks. And we'll preview also what happened as far as the fantasy league, who tops the charts so far in the fantasy league, and how my fantasy team did here this week as well. We'll talk everything Dirt Bristol, like I mentioned here in this podcast review. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in here very early on. Give it a couple minutes to go. Wait for you guys to file back in. And, of course, my thoughts and opinions on Dirt Bristol one final time. Postponed, obviously, because the race got postponed to Monday. Usually we have these podcasts at 5 p.m. on Mondays, or at least we're going to. I guess this is the only the second week that we're doing it right now. But, yes, 5 p.m. Monday, Eastern Standard Time will be the usual day, at least, or I should say the day after the race. But, again, I had to work yesterday, and everything kind of spiraled out of control as far as that went, just simply because, again, I had to work and the race got postponed. If the race wouldn't have gotten postponed, we definitely would have gotten this in by Sunday. But I've got Racing Reference pulled up. I've got the NASCAR Fantasy app pulled up. And we're going to get ready to go. So, as usual, though, with the race breakdown, chronological order, what happened, we'll start with stage number 1. And Kyle Busch jumped out to a very early lead on Denny Hamlin, who actually started on the pole. Remember, Kyle Larson had to drop to the rear of the field at the start of the race due to an engine change in final practice. Yes, they did have practice, and they were going to have the qualifying heat races, but qualifying got rained out on Saturday, so there was still no qualifying this week, but at least these guys had practice laps because, boy, did they need it. Definitely worked out for the Cup race. Again, this is only a Cup race review, not a Truck Series race, but we're going to go, again, chronological order. So Kyle Busch was able to lead about the first 10 laps or so of the race. He was out in front pretty well. Martin Truex Jr. was closing in on him in stage 1, but before Truex had a chance to pass him on speed, Kyle Busch started overheating, which was very interesting because he was the lead car in the pack. I don't know exactly how he got so much dirt and mud on the grill of the race car versus a lot of guys further back in the pack didn't have that issue, so that was very surprising. He did start in the second row, so he would have had that mostly from the first 2 laps of the race before he got to the lead, but still very shocked that his car overheated, especially the fact that nobody else's car overheated. So Kyle Busch had to come down onto pit road under green flag conditions and quickly put him a lap down just 10 laps into the race again after leading. They gave the lead to Martin Truex Jr., and he did not look back. He dominated the opening stage of the race, actually went on to lead the most laps in the race as well. So Martin Truex Jr., great job. He ended up going on to win stage 1. Though right before the end of stage 1, that Martin Truex Jr. was able to get the win with about 10 laps to go on the stage. We had our first caution of the race right around lap 40. Hard crash down the back straightaway for Eric Almirola, a couple other drivers involved. It was really the biggest crash we had, one of a couple bigger crashes that we had in the race, but definitely the hardest impact got taken. Almirola looked like he got squeezed underneath the 77 of Friesen. Not sure what happened leading up to that, according to Almirola. The 77 left just enough room for Almirola to get underneath, and when he got underneath, he got pinched and forced him to get out of control, which we saw the tail end of it. There might have been a little bit of contact between the two drivers, and Almirola got a little sideways, more so than what you would usually see in dirt racing. When Almirola got sideways, he clipped the one of the dirtles they were talking about, but one of the turtles on the inside of the racetrack that is supposed to keep the cars up the groove, so that way it keeps them from diving and cutting the corner too much on corner entries. So Almirola ended up hitting one of those, actually the very last one, in the corner, and that shot him back across the racetrack. He did keep it off the outside wall, only to be sitting backwards in the middle of the racetrack, and there was nowhere for anybody to go. There were 2 and 3 wide behind him, plus they were on dirt, and forgetting that they can't really slam the brakes on the with their tires, they locked up, and all they did was spin and slide right into him. Big hit, again, for Eric Almirola, right there. It was Corey LaJoie hit him on the inside really hard, but the first impact on the outside from Anthony Alfredo was pretty brutal. Once Alfredo hit the front of Almirola's car that shot Almirola back down to the inside after he was already parked, and then he got drilled again by Corey LaJoie, so a couple hard impacts there, but Almirola seemed to be okay. Everybody was okay in that accident. And definitely the three of those guys got the worst end of it there. We ended up having another crash on the restart at the end of the stage as well, and that actually ended the first stage under caution. But that was nowhere near as bad or as ugly as that one was, that's for sure. They got to the first competition yellow at lap 50. Remember, there was a competition yellow at lap 50 and 150 for track repair and track, necessity to water it and pack it back down again. Natural maintenance you would usually see in a normal dirt race. So NASCAR did a pretty good job coming up with the idea of doing that. They probably should have let the teams know further in advance. I know a lot of it was because of the rain that they had gotten, but I think they should have probably done that anyway. And I was a little skeptical at first, too, because I didn't want, a competition yellow in a race that, especially with having practice leading up to, I'm like, okay, they're getting 2 hours of practice. You give them a couple of competition cautions too. But I do like it, though. Again, it helped with the track maintenance. It obviously makes sense. You would usually see it in normal dirt racing. Usually, if you would see like a 100-lap main event on even a local show, if they were to have that, one of the bigger purse races perhaps, they would usually cut it in half. They would allow the teams to make adjustments at the lap 50 mark. They would refuel the cars and do whatever they needed to do adjustment-wise. So with NASCAR doing the same thing in the stage breaks, it honestly didn't really bother me at all. I thought it was the right thing to do. After the competition yellow, things actually went pretty smoothly for the rest of stage one until late in the stage, Christopher Bell spun out. Yes, Christopher Bell, one of the guys with probably the most dirt racing experience. I'd say the second most behind Kyle Larson. The only reason it's the second most is because he's younger than Kyle Larson. So Larson's been on this earth more, therefore he's got at least a couple more years of dirt experience than Christopher Bell. But man, Christopher Bell running in second place on the outside groove. He was working the outside well. So was Martin Truex Jr. at times, who was leading the race still. And also Kyle Larson was running the outside. And Larson, boy, he was really, really fast. A lot of people can say he would have won if he didn't get in that accident. You don't know for sure because we still had over 150 laps left by that point when the wreck happened. Again, we weren't even to the end of stage one, but the fact that Kyle Larson, with only a couple cautions in stage one before that competition yellow, was able to go from dead last starting position all the way up to where he was running behind Bell, battling for second on that restart after the competition yellow. I mean, that was just insane that he charged through the field that quickly. He was definitely putting on a clinic, but right when he got up there, and Bell got sideways, Bell could not save it, and unfortunately for Kyle Larson, he piled right into him. Very shocking moment. I'd probably say it was the most shocking moment in this race. It definitely took me by surprise. Of course, we live streamed that race, the live commentary throughout the course of the race, so you guys could probably go back through and find it. I was completely shocked when making that call, and definitely speed the rest of the race. But if Ross Chastain didn't pile into the end of that, I really do think that Chastain would have had at least Kyle Larson would have had a decent shot to maybe get the car fixed a little bit quicker, maybe stay on the lead lap, because we saw some guys later in the race that had heavy damage to the cars, which we'll get into when we talk about stage two, that had heavy damage on the cars, and they were not only able to stay on the lead lap and actually salvage a decent finish out of it. And I wonder if that could have been the same for Kyle Larson, but it was not. Larson fell 3 laps down. He actually got to 2 laps down again just to fall 3 laps down at the end of stage 2. So his chances of winning went out the window. Bell and Chastain completely got knocked out of the race after that accident. Talked about Martin Truex Jr. briefly winning stage 1 and leading the most laps in the race. We'll take you through the stage 1 results. So Martin Truex Jr. gets his second stage win of the season. William Byron finished in second. Denny Hamlin third. Daniel Suarez finished fourth. He had a great day. We'll get into that here in a couple seconds. Ryan Blaney ended up, he started on the front row with Larson going back to the rear, and he pretty much stayed in the top 10 for the most part and finished 6th on the stage. Joey Logano finished 7th in stage 1. Blaney finished 5th. Sixth was Logano. Seventh was Bubba Wallace. Ryan Newman eighth. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. ninth. And Chris Buescher rounded out the top 10 in stage 1. Newman also went for a spin in that stage. He had contact with Chris Buescher on that. I don't think it was the same restart. Actually, I think it was the restart after the Larson-Bell. It was either the restart before or the restart after the Larson-Bell situation and that caution came out, but they got into each other, and Newman still rallied back to finish 8th in stage 1 despite spinning earlier on. Now on to stage number 2. We had a new guy take over stage 2. Martin Truex Jr. led over 100 laps on the day, actually goes down as leading just under half the race, with the race ended up going to overtime. He led 126 laps. So the next guy to take over pretty much right after stage 2 started was Daniel Suarez. Yes, that's right. Trackhouse Racing's Daniel Suarez really got out ahead, and he was able to dominate stage 2 for the most part. He got to the lead midway in between the start of the second stage and then the next competition, yellow, and it was a very good day for Daniel Suarez. Suarez ended up leading 58 laps. He led the third most laps in the race. He actually led more laps in this race than any other race in his Cup Series career, so got that going as well. Yeah, credit to Daniel Suarez, that new team. They showed a lot of speed at Atlanta the week prior, and here in this race today, or I guess 2 days ago now, that was really impressive, very impressive, especially with Suarez not having any dirt racing experience outside of the truck race and the practice they had leading up to it. No dirt racing experience for Suarez going in to Dirt Bristol, unless he ran some preliminary events the couple weeks before, which I have no clue. He could have. I honestly don't know. I can't remember. Can't remember who was all in the preliminary events, but he was in the truck race, and he actually did a pretty decent job in the truck race, too. He was in the top 15 at least for being his first real race on dirt, really. So great job for Daniel Suarez, and he was in the top 5 all day long. Remember, I just stated that he finished 4th at the end of stage 1, so he was in the top 5 all day, got to the lead there. It looked like he was going to have a chance to win the stage until late in the stage. Joey Logano was able to get around him after the competition caution. So Suarez led to the second competition yellow. He led a little bit after that, but you can definitely tell that they weren't able to keep up with the track quite like some of the other drivers that ended up finishing ahead of him did. And Joey Logano ended up stealing the stage 2 victory away from Daniel Suarez. That was Joey Logano's second stage win of the season as well, so another playoff point there. And Joey Logano took over as maybe the new favorite going into the final stage up to that point. The stage 2 results, as mentioned, Logano got the stage win. Second place was Daniel Suarez, so he still had a great run. Again, top 4 in both stages. Denny Hamlin finished 3rd in both stages as well. Martin Truex Jr. fell back to 4th in stage 2. Ryan Newman finishes 5th. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. moves up to 6th. Bubba Wallace again finishes 7th in stage 2. Eric Jones peaks into the top 10, finishing 8th in the stage, with Tyler Reddick and Chase Elliott getting the final 2 stage points in the second stage of the race. After the final, caution, technically for it was a stage 2 break, but a final caution / red flag that they ended up having in the race. This one was one of the mandatory red flags at the stage break, allowing the crews to make one last adjustment to their race cars going into the final stage of the race. But no matter what the adjustments were, they were not able to keep up with Joey Logano. The only car that was close, and the only driver who was close to Logano on speed in the final stage, was Denny Hamlin. So Hamlin became the new challenger to the 22 Mustang Ford driving Joey Logano for Penske Racing. And Hamlin looked like he was going to get to the lead. It almost looked like he was faster on that short run at the start of the stage. The track was very different. They watered the track probably more than what they did in the prior 200 laps leading up to it. So that definitely probably caught Logano, and I'm sure a lot of the field off guard. Denny Hamlin in his car was able to react a lot better on the outside lane. Logano was sticking with the bottom, so Hamlin would get the run off the corners early in the run. gripping well in the outside lane after the water got laid down, but he knew that outside lane was going to go away when it started to dry back up again. So he had to make that move as quick as he could, and I think that's why you saw him being as aggressive. He was bumping Logano, trying to move him up out of the way, and credit to Joey Logano for not moving out of the way. Especially being on dirt and Logano not having any dirt racing experience background, I can only imagine the bumps he was getting and trying to keep control of that car on dirt when he's not, familiar with that. Had to have been a handful, and he somehow was able to hold on. He actually led every lap of the final stage of the race. We did end up getting a late race caution with 4 laps to go. One of the drivers making their first career start, Mike Marlar, who was in an incident in the truck race, believe it or not, and then also got in an incident late there. It's really tough to see a late race caution like that. I get if 2 guys are going for position hard and they're going for a good position, maybe inside the top 10, trying to get every point they can, especially if they don't have a win. But Mike Marlar in his first career start, he was racing for MBM this week. Timmy Hill was absent out of the 66 car. They brought in Marlar with his dirt racing experience background, and he loses control pretty much all by himself with about 4 laps to go, noses it into the wall, down the back straightaway, caution waves. That set ourselves up for another restart. And Denny Hamlin had a shot. And I thought with as aggressive as he was, beating on Logano for about a good 10 to 15 laps at the beginning of the stage, he fell about 2 to 2.5 seconds back before the caution waved. I figured this is it. He is going to move him. NASCAR moved to single file restarts probably about, after the competition yellow? Yeah, I think it was after the competition yellow because of how dusty it was on the restarts. The second competition yellow, back at lap 150. So they moved to single file restarts. Another thing that you would usually see in dirt racing. I expressed this during the broadcast. I'll express it briefly right now. I've been to sprint car races before where they'll have a double file restart. World of Outlaws uses double file restarts now. I've seen a World of Outlaw event at my local dirt track nearest to me, and they started the night in the heat races double file, but because it wasn't so much that the track was as dusty as like what you saw at Dirt Bristol, but it was maybe a little too narrow for the World of Outlaw. It was too dangerous at that sense, and same thing with NASCAR where it was too dusty, it was too dangerous for that aspect of wrecking cars that they were going to single file restarts. World of Outlaw does it. Other sprint car races do the same thing. Heck, sometimes they'll even go single file initial start because of how bad the dust is. Even with me racing quarter midgets and go-karts growing up, racing on dirt, same thing applied there. If the track was too dusty or the track preparation just wasn't to where they wanted it to be or where they expected it to be, then they would go single file with the start of the race even sometimes, and not just restarts. So not something out of the ordinary with dirt racing. Again, NASCAR made the swap just like with the competition yellows. They did a great job with that. And again, set ourselves up after that overtime finish. By the way, they had to throw the caution because Mike Marlar was parked down the backstairs. I mean, he nosed it into the wall. They had to put him on the record, I believe, after that. So they had to throw the yellow, and that set ourselves up for an overtime finish. And I thought Denny Hamlin was going to use the bumper. And I'm not going to say I was disappointed that he didn't use the bumper because I'm not really like a fan of either 2 drivers personally. I mean, not that I don't root against them. They're just not my favorite driver. Again, I've stated that before, but I just don't know why he didn't do that. It almost seemed like, I think it was Chris Gabehart. It could have been the spotter, but I think it was Chris Gabehart, Denny Hamlin's crew chief, that even said, you've got the most aggressive driver sitting right behind you. Do whatever you can to get around him. And after Denny ran him aggressively, I thought they were going to go into turn 1 and Denny was just going to punt him. I honestly thought that was going to happen. You would have hated to have seen something like that happen as a racing fan like me, especially Logano dominating the final stage and hanging on for dear life. Hamlin had a good short run car at the beginning of the stage too, so all those, but he just went right to the outside. He did give him a little bit of a bump, but he gave him the bump and then went high, and that kind of stalled out Denny Hamlin's momentum. And not only costed Hamlin a chance to win the race, but it costed him second place too, because Ricky Stenhouse came right up the inside. He was able to get around him in less than a lap before they came to the white flag, and Stenhouse was digging. He was a little bit faster than Logano that last lap, but Logano still finished about a half a second ahead of him. By the time Stenhouse did clear Hamlin, he was just too far back. If he would have had, honestly, I guarantee if he would have had 3 or 4 more laps, Ricky Stenhouse probably would have won the race. He would have gotten to Logano, and I guarantee Stenhouse would have used the bumper. So definitely ended up coming down to that. Ethan, Jonathan Rogers, welcome to the stream, by the way. I will get into that windshield wipers discussion here real quick after I go through the finishing results. So, again, Joey Logano gets the win, his first of the year. 7 different winners in the first 7 races. The race results, or at least the top 10, go like this. Joey Logano finished in first. Second place was Ricky Stenhouse Jr., as mentioned. Denny Hamlin dropped to third after leading just 1 lap. That was the first lap of the race. Daniel Suarez finished fourth. Mentioned he led the third most laps. 58 laps led. New career high there for Daniel Suarez in one race. Ryan Newman rounds out the top 5. He was one of the sleeper picks. We'll get into all that fantasy talk after this. Again, this is the NASCAR Fantasy Podcast, so we'll get into that stuff here in a couple seconds. William Byron finishes in 6th. Great run. He was in the top 10 all day. Really picked up where he might have learned with iRacing, because I don't think he really had much dirt racing background. One of the dirt guys, Tyler Reddick, finishes in 7th, and he wasn't really there until about end of stage 2, so his car was coming along. It came along late. Ryan Blaney finishes 8th. Great comeback performance for him. I guess I forgot to mention there was a second big wreck that happened in stage 2. It was after the competition yellow, when all the dust was coming up and you couldn't see anything in the restarts. That's what ended up making NASCAR go to the single file restarts. There was a bad accident, like a half a lap off the restart. Not a bad accident, but it was a big accident. There were a lot of cars involved. A couple guys got knocked out of the race in that accident. I believe the only guys that were knocked out of that one were Cody Ware and Wyndham. It looks like Ware actually got back out on the racetrack after that. But there were some heavy hitters involved. Kyle Busch, who was making his way back through the field, was involved in that wreck, and Ryan Blaney. They had the 2 probably biggest damage of the car still running, and again, heavy hitters. Blaney was on the top 10 all day. You hated to see that happen to Kyle Busch, who looked like he had a fast car early, did get back in the top 10 until that happened. Busch was not able to recover, but again, Ryan Blaney, 8th place. What a drive. And I'll tell you what, Ryan Blaney has had a very interesting start to the season. Ryan Blaney, I'll get into him, I guess, when we go to the power rankings, because he is in the top 10, so we will spotlight him and talk about him. 9th place, Eric Jones, great run for Richard Petty Racing, and Chase Elliott is going to round out the top 10. There was also an incident in the final stage 2 where Bubba Wallace had a flat tire while running inside the top 10. Again, he was 7th all day. He finished 7th in both stages. He was running 7th when he had the flat tire after contact with Stenhouse. I believe that was on the the second to last restart, the start of stage 3, and that ended up putting him 2 laps down. He could not come back from it. Again, had to make that green flag stop to repair, and that left rear tire replace it, I guess. So he ended up dropping back to 27. Just wanted to note that real quick because he was having a great day. Probably the best day he's had with that team so far this season. Joey Logano fan 2215L, welcome to the stream. Third in the chat, I'm guessing. Got 9 likes right now, thanks. So yes, Jonathan Rogers with the question, they should give them windshield wipers for the dirt. Windshield wipers would not work with dirt like it does rain. It would just smear the dust. So that would not happen. A lot of people have said that they should probably go with the without windshields and like the steel grates like you would see on late models. I would say that would work for sure. It wouldn't hurt anything, I'll tell you that much. So maybe that's something they can take into consideration for next year. One other thing, too, and I did kind of mention it because I did see questions like that pop up, like, why do they have windshields, this week, or they shouldn't have windshields during both races. So this is the dustiest dirt track that we've seen NASCAR run at. Even when the Truck Series was at Eldora for the last 7 years, they still had windshields, and they never really had a problem with mud caking onto the windshield. They never had a problem with dirt, coming onto the windshield. And I think that's what led to NASCAR not even really questioning using a windshield for both races, for the truck and the Cup Series races this weekend. I feel like if we would have had a race at Eldora before that, especially in recent years, that might have ended up like caking, mud or dust and dirt onto the windshield, making it harder to see and sticking to the windshield than what we saw this weekend. They probably would have had something like that. We would have have already seen it in recent years with the Truck Series races on dirt. So, ARCA's also been, racing on dirt the last couple of years too. K&N races have been on dirt, and we've never really seen this issue until now. Will NASCAR take the step going forward again? I think they could, seeing that was an issue this weekend. Pretty much from practice all the way through it was an issue. But again, we'll just have to wait and see, because this is the first time we've even really had an issue like that. If we were at Eldora, I guarantee we probably wouldn't have had that issue, because we haven't. And some of it might have to do with the material they put on the racetrack. Again, this is not an actual dirt track like it is with Eldora, so that is definitely a big difference there, where Eldora's maintenance and maintained all racing season, not during the winter necessarily, but from pretty much, I would have to assume, March all the way through October, they're maintaining that racetrack as a dirt track. Bristol, they were maintaining it, they put dirt on it in January, so they were maintaining it for about 2 months. And a lot of people were wondering, why are they putting dirt on Bristol this early when they did put dirt on Bristol, early January, mid-January when it was? Well, that's why. They have to maintain the track. You have these other dirt tracks that are, especially the better ones that are high maintenance, they're maintenance very well. Well, that's because they maintenance it almost year-round, versus with Bristol being a normal concrete racetrack. They had to throw all this together basically in the last 2 months, and the only reason they didn't do it sooner is because it was in the middle of winter. Trevor Grimes, welcome to the stream. Next race I'm going to is Martinsville in 2 weeks. Oh, well, congratulations. Yeah, I'll be at Martinsville later this year, but that'd be cool to see the night race there, for sure. It'll be the first night race at Martinsville that they're allowing fans, because last year they couldn't allow it, but they still had the scheduled night race. Martin Truex Jr. won that race, and he's been pretty good this year, so he might be one of the favorites again. He was fast this weekend. He won the truck race, dominated the truck race, won a stage in the Cup race. He definitely looked really good. Top 5 all race. Yeah, so if we don't have any other questions in the chat about the race specifically, then I'll just move on to our next topic, our next segment, and that will be reviewing our fantasy team this week. My fantasy team, see how those guys did, and then we'll review everything in the fantasy league as well. And we'll also spotlight the must-haves that I had this week, the sleepers and the don't-haves, and see how I stacked up. And usually, I think there's only been one race that I haven't done well at all with the must-haves, the don't-haves, and the sleeper picks. I pretty much nailed on all of them except for, Phoenix? I think it was Phoenix. I was just off for whatever reason. I don't know what it was that I was off, but I was off on my picks. Even the Daytona 500, I pretty much had most of them right. A lot of it was because being able to look at speed weeks and stuff, so it's a lot harder when there's no practice or qualifying, that's for sure. You're only going off recent history, where if you have practice and qualifying, you can go off of recent history and practice and qualifying. Makes it a lot easier to not only make fantasy picks, but make my quote-unquote my self-proclaimed expert analysis on who's going to run well and who won't. So that's probably why we see a lot more shocking runs out of guys that we're not expecting, because it's even with no practice or qualifying. That's for sure. All right, so yeah, we're going to take a look at the fantasy team. So my fantasy team, I had Ricky Stenhouse Jr. He was also one of the sleeper picks. He performed well. He was in the top 10 all day. He was in the back half of the top 10 for a large part of the first 2 stages, but once we got to the final stage, they made the right adjustment at the very end to get their car at its fastest, and he probably had the fastest car on the racetrack. Remember, he restarted in the 9th position, I believe. No, 6th. He was 6th at the end of the stage. So he restarted 6th, which is the outside. He probably didn't take off well in the restart, because I think he did drop back toward even further in the back half of the top 10 before he started going forward, and the entire final stage went green until that last caution had set up the overtime green, white checker finish. So he was able to work his way all the way back up to 3rd during that 50-lap green flag run. That was impressive. Obviously, he's got dirt racing background going into it, so I figured Stenhouse was going to run well, and he did a very good job on the team. Austin Dillon, he was another one of the sleeper picks. He was also on my fantasy team. And I'll throw this name out there too. Ryan Newman was a sleeper pick, but he was not on my fantasy team. So that was the mistake I made. Austin Dillon disappointed me. I honestly, I had higher hopes for him. He has run well on dirt in the truck series, and he ran well on Bristol dirt within the last couple weeks. He won, not two, but three preliminary events in the last 2 weeks at Bristol dirt, so I expected him to run well. He finished 21st, and he went a lap down before the end of stage 1 during that 40-lap green flag run at the beginning of the stage. So I don't know. I don't know what happened to Austin Dillon. They were off, and it's weird, too, that he's got that dirt racing, maybe not as much of a background as Tyler Reddick, his teammate, but the fact that we know Austin Dillon to still run well on dirt, and Reddick was in the top 10, and he was about like a 10th place car the whole day. And I'm sure his prowess pretty much got him that 7th place finish, too. Austin Dillon was just noticeably slower. He still finished the race a lap down. Only 19 cars finished on the lead lap. So, yeah, that was definitely tough for Austin Dillon. It hurt my fantasy team, that's for sure. Chase Briscoe is another guy with dirt racing experience. He was also on my fantasy team. And I did not have him as a sleeper pick. I did not take him as a sleeper pick. And a lot of it is because he's a rookie. And I usually don't even like putting rookies on my fantasy team either. I stated that a lot last year when I started the channel. I was talking about Reddick Bell and Custer. And I don't think I use those guys combined more than 4 times the whole season. Again, I just don't trust. I just don't trust rookies, especially my fantasy team. But I went against what I usually trust, because Briscoe has a lot of dirt racing experience and background, and he's racing for Stewart-Haas Racing, which Tony Stewart, big sprint car guy, big dirt track racing guy. I would have thought both of those meshed together, and we could have saw Chase Briscoe in the top 10. He ran the truck race, and he did actually run well in the truck race, too. He finished in the top 5, so, all that considered, I was like, okay, we get into the cup race. He should be right there. And again, just like Austin Dillon, he finished a lap down, and he finished only 1 spot ahead of Dillon. He finished 20th. No stage points for either Austin Dillon or Briscoe. I mean, that killed my fantasy team this week. That alone killed my fantasy team this week. I know the Larson and Bell wreck happened, but even if that wreck still happened and those guys would have ran in the top 10 like I expected them to, I mean, I would have had a pretty good day. Kyle Larson, like I just mentioned, Christopher Bell were on my team. They got in that wreck, which I also mentioned, and it was in stage 1, so they didn't get any stage points either. I was able to put Bell in the garage. Larson stayed in the race, so I had to keep him in the lineup. Problem is, I can only use Larson 5 more times this year. I've been playing the hot hand, and I guess ideally I probably should have just put Bell in, even though I would have scored 5 less points. It would have given me an extra usage out of Kyle Larson, which I would have to assume I'm going to use Larson more than Bell this year. Maybe I won't going forward. Who knows? Well, I guess I can't now, no matter what. So, yeah, I'm in trouble there with Larson. I put Martin Truex Jr. in the lineup last second. I wasn't going to have him in the lineup. I had Ryan Newman in the lineup, and Newman ended up running well. Ideally, hindsight's always 20/20, and in this case, hindsight, I would have put Truex in for probably Chase Briscoe or Austin Dillon, one of those two. If I would have put Truex in for one of those two, I probably still would have scored a lot of points, because Newman, he scored stage points in both stages. He finished 5th. Again, he was one of the sleeper picks. Great job there. So I was right on the sleeper pick, and I didn't take my own advice. That's the problem. At the end of the day, I put Briscoe in my lineup over Newman, even though I specifically said on the podcast a few days ago during the predictions part that I had Newman as a sleeper. I think a lot of people are sleeping on him. And then I still put the rookie in my lineup when I don't trust rookie. I don't know what my thought process was when I put Truex in over Newman instead of Briscoe. Like, 9 times out of 10, I would have put him in for Briscoe. Why I didn't this time, looking back on it, I really don't know. And then hindsight, looking back on it, it's like, wow, that was stupid. Why'd you do that? Why did you do that? You wouldn't normally do that. Whatever. It was a bad week for fantasy. Yeah, Truex did score a lot of stage points. He scored 17. If I do my math right, I think he outscored Hamlin by 1 stage point, so Truex scored the most stage points in the race. That definitely helped, and yeah, again, Bell was in the garage. The other sleeper pick I had said about in the predictions fantasy was J.J. Yaley. And I wasn't going to put him in my lineup because it was too big of a risk, but I did say that J.J. Yaley was going to get a top 15. He did not. I think Yaley honestly could have if he was in better equipment. I think his equipment was holding him back because he was the highest running driver for Rick Ware Racing the whole day. I know it's not saying much, but like all those other dirt guys that were running their first career race, I figured that they weren't going to run as well as Yaley because Yaley's actually got experience in a cup car as well as dirt racing experience. And I figured with all that said that the dirt racing experience was going to overcome the non-dirt racing guys. And I expected J.J. Yaley to get a top 15, but he finished in 28th. He only finished 4 laps down, which for a Rick Ware racing car, that's not bad. But yeah, 28th. He did beat Kyle Larson and Christopher Bell. so I mean, there's that. Larson finished 5 laps down, so I mean, I guess you could take that as a win. No, I'm not going to take that as a win. So yeah, this is the second week of the year I have not hit very well with my predictions, my overall predictions for the race weekend. Tim Irvin, welcome to the stream, by the way. So yeah, overall, that was not good. The don't haves for the week. I only had 2 of them. Eric Almirola, he wasn't running good. He was about to go a lap down before he crashed right in front of Martin Truex Jr., so he was already outside the top 20 late in stage 1, and then he ended up getting that in that crash. So I was right on that, that Eric Almirola was a don't have, and he did not perform well. And the other don't have was Brad Keselowski, and I was right on that as well. Yes, Keselowski finished 11th, but he didn't score any stage points, and he really only got there at the end of the race, probably because of Larson and all those guys wrecked. So, yeah, no stage points. Let me look real quick where Keselowski was this week in points scored. So, oh, that's for the season. I don't want that. I was going to say, he did not get the 5th most points scored. He didn't even score any stage points. So Keselowski was 12th. So as a don't have, honestly, it's like that's average, but I consider that pretty well done job predicting the don't haves. I mean, Almirola didn't finish well, and Keselowski didn't score any stage points, and he finished 12th. So, yeah, I'd say that Brad Keselowski, I was good with the don't haves this week. If there's one upside I can look at, is that my don't haves were good. So we still got that trend going, right? And the must-haves were Larson and Bell, and we already covered multiple times that they wrecked out. So that is going to do it for that portion of the fantasy talk. Now we're going to take a look at the lineup. I don't have the visual of the screen, but I will be able to read them off again this week. Hopefully by next week I can have some sort of a like marker at the bottom of the screen, or maybe cut the screen in half like I would on the other videos and actually show you guys what the overall standings look like right now. But first, Dirt Bristol last week, the highest scorer was R6R6. Not sure if you're in the chat right now, but you scored the most points last week in fantasy by 6 over Andrew Hollenbach. So 156 points total for R6R6. Let's take a look at what his team was and what his team consisted of. All right, so R6R6 had Joey Logano and Denny Hamlin. They both finished well. They were the top 2 in points scored. He had Harvick, 16th, not Bell. He had, not great. Had Bell, which unfortunately got in an accident, and Brad Keselowski, which he must not have been in for the predictions video because I said don't start Brad Keselowski, and he didn't do so hot either. So even our winner this week didn't score so hot. A lot of it was because of Bell, crashing out. Harvick was mediocre, and Brad was mediocre. In there, I'm not sure why. He must have just forgot to change his lineup before the end of stage 2. And then as far as the week again, You can go on the NASCAR mobile app or website, go to Fantasy, search KRC League, and join KRC in all caps League. And if you join the league, you have a shot to win a year-end prize of 2 tickets to any race of your choosing in 2022. You have 2 shots at it, so even if you're late on the entry for the regular season, if you end up playing in the playoffs, we'll have a separate prize there. So you actually have a chance to win twice, if you think about it. Like, you could actually win twice, or you might not win at all. Because it is tough to win in this league. I know there's only 11 of us right now, but that's still 11 people you got to beat, including myself, and I'm towards the top of the charts right now. But not quite at the top. P-Shat Motorsports still in the lead, and I think there was only 1 week he was not leading. 1 or 2 weeks. He won Daytona. That's Patrick Shadley in the chat for those of you that didn't know. But, yeah, P-Shat Motorsports. And then Super B-Man 1 is, that's Tim, right? That's you, Tim. The Chevy 1, I probably would have came in first. Yeah, that's possible. That's possible. I had Chevy winning, too, because I had Larson winning. Coulda, woulda, shoulda, though. But, yeah, Tim, you're up to second place. And currently the lead is only 39 points, so that gap is closed. Wasn't it like 80 after this week or something like that? So that gap is more than cut in half. Then I'm still in the mix, too. I'm in third. About 60 off the lead, so I closed in even though I didn't have a great week. Andrew Hollenbach, fourth. 10 points behind me for third, and then Ravish has moved into the top 5 ahead of Inside Uranus. R6 is climbing up that leaderboard, though. Yeah, so don't forget your fantasy lineups. You do have a week off this week. Again, Martinsville's not going to be ran until the week after Easter. Again, NASCAR usually doesn't run on Easter weekend. This year is no different. So that is an update of what the Fantasy League looks like. And now we get into the final part of this episode. It is the weekly power rankings. I really actually like doing this because it gives me something to do during my lunch break at work. And I go through, I can find, something information-wise, and I can basically book off of it. So I have my list from last week and my updated list for this week for my personal power rankings. So these are the top 10 drivers who are really the top 10 in order of how I look with the eye test, as well as stats and statistics involved, obviously, as well. You have to involve those. Those are it's mostly off of stats and statistics, but then the tiebreakers, I guess, would kind of be like my eye test of where I think the race teams are, both the teams they're driving for in general, and then just simply how they've been running versus the other in the head-to-head. So here is the top 10. I will go out and say that nobody who was off the top 10 list moved into the top 10 this week, but we did have a lot of shaking around inside the top 10. So the top 10 drivers are still the same, but they're just in a much different order. The drivers that are on the outside that did not make the list once again include Kyle Busch, who did not have a lot of great luck, so I definitely couldn't move him onto the list. Chase Elliott, who is very close. If he gets another top 10 next week, Chase Elliott will be on my power rankings list. 2 weeks at Martinsville, which he's got a good chance of finishing the top 10. And I kind of mentioned that too a couple weeks ago, that Chase Elliott just hasn't ran that well compared to his Hendrick Motorsports teammates. He only had 2 top 10s until this week. He got his third with a 10th place finish. And honestly, if he would have finished in the top 5, I probably would have moved him on the list ahead of Christopher Bell, because Bell, I'll just say it right now, that Christopher Bell's 10th on the power rankings list right now. And the only reason Bell is in over Elliott is because Bell's got to win. He's locked into the playoffs, and Elliott's still winless. So that's, again, the only reason for you Chase fans watching, being like, whoa, why is Chase Elliott off the list again? We have 7 different winners. And there's only 3 guys, better than Chase right now, and by my eye test and by the stats right now. Who got an ad on YouTube? The head, we still got the juice or something. What, for this? Shouldn't have gotten an ad for this. I'm not monetized. If so, YouTube better be giving me that money. But anyway, Yeah, so I wouldn't have gotten that at it. But LSU superfan, welcome to the stream. Yeah, or what was I talking about? That got me sidetracked now when I saw that. Oh, yeah, Christopher Bell's 10th over Chase Elliott. So, again, Chase Elliott is really close. He's got the same amount of top 10s as Christopher Bell. He's got one more top 5 than Bell, but Bell's got the win. So that's why Christopher's ahead. They both have one stage win as well this season. So pretty much even right there except for the win, and that's why Bell's up ahead. And then guys without a win, really everybody that's ahead of Elliott without a win, they have at least 2 more top 5s. And they're much higher in the point standings than what Chase Elliott is also. I'll bring up the point standings here while we're at it, and I didn't mean to exit completely out of my NASCAR app. Now I gotta log back in. Chase Elliott's 9th in the point standings, so he keeps dropping back. 2 weeks ago, he was 4th. Then he dropped back to 7th. Now he's back to 9th, because although he finished 10th, he didn't get any stage points. Joey Logano fan 22, welcome back to the stream. But yeah, so Christopher Bell is in over guys like Kyle Busch, Chase Elliott. Other drivers outside the list that you could make an argument, honestly, there really isn't anybody else that's off the list that I would consider. Maybe Kurt Busch, but Kurt Busch only has, he's 15th in points. He's only got 2 top 10s, so that wasn't really a tough decision there. And then Stenhouse just got his first top 5, first top 10 of the year with that runner-up. So Austin Dillon is 11th in the point standings, but he's only got 2 top 10s, 1 top 5 as well. But credit to Austin Dillon. He is running well this season. So Christopher Bell was 8th in the power rankings. Let me pull the list back up again. Yeah, so Christopher Bell was 8th in the power rankings last week. He moves back to 10th this week, and all of it is simply because he underperformed as far as his race finish goes. He wrecked out when I thought he was going to have a chance to win. And I said, there's a good chance he's going to move up on the list, assuming he finishes in the top 10. And, well, he didn't even finish in the top 10. So that was very disappointing. Bell drops back 2 spots in the power rankings to 10th. This guy is going to move up 1 spot in the power rankings. He's 9th. Michael McDowell. Yes, Michael McDowell. They didn't talk about him at all yesterday, but Michael McDowell had a quiet but decent performance. He finished in the top 10, guys. Or, sorry, not the top 10. That was a lie. I didn't mean to lie, though. He finished 12th. So, Brad Keselowski finished 11th. But Michael McDowell finished 12th at Dirt Bristol. Another guy with no dirt racing background. Smaller team. And Michael McDowell finished 12th yesterday. That 12th place finish is better than Bell by far. He's got the same amount of top 10 still as Bell with 1 win, equal as Bell. Michael McDowell trending in the right direction. And again, we're 7 races into the season, and he has had career-high finishes at every racetrack we've raced at this year except for 1, which was Phoenix, and he tied his career-high finish. Michael McDowell, 12th place run yesterday at Bristol, which I think is better than any other run he's had at Bristol on concrete. So if you want to consider that too, I'm not going to because it's Dirt Bristol, but if you wanted to, he's basically 7 for 7 there. So Michael McDowell moves up 1 spot in the power rankings. He is at 9th. At number 8, also moving up 1 spot from last week, William Byron. Byron had a good run. He was in the top 10 for most of the second half of the day. And William Byron ended up with a 6th place finish, again better than Bell, who dropped 2 spots. So Bell dropped 2, stayed in the top 10, and the 2 guys that moved ahead of him both moved up 1 spot of Byron and McDowell. I mean, it was pretty easy to make the bottom half of the list right here. So that's why William Byron is at number 8. Brad Keselowski's at number 7. He moves way back. Brad Keselowski was 4th on the list last week. He moves back to 7th, so he drops 3 spots. He actually dropped more spots than anybody else on the power rankings list this week. He didn't score any stage points. He just didn't run well at all. He finished 11th. He didn't get a top 10 either. So for Brad Keselowski, gonna look here at the race results, not just from yesterday, but Keselowski 3 races ago, I would have had as the best driver. Honestly, 3 races ago, I would have had Keselowski number 1 on the power rankings list. I didn't have a power rankings then. He underperformed at Atlanta, which is one of his better tracks. I mean, I know he had that damage, but he finished 28th. Phoenix, he finished 4th. So, yeah, I mean, again, 3 weeks ago, Brad Keselowski probably would have been at the top of the list. Or at least second behind Hamlin. And, I mean, there's nothing else to say. Again, 2 finishes outside the top 10 in a row when the guys that moved up ahead of him have either won or have stayed the same as far as where they're running on the racetrack every week. So, yeah, Brad Keselowski had to drop him back to 7th. Again, loss of 3 spots in the power rankings. Kevin Harvick also drops backwards in the power rankings. He was 5th last week. He is now 6th. For Harvick, he still got 5 top 5s on the year. He didn't run well at Dirt Bristol yesterday. He did run decent in the truck race, got a top 10 there, but he finished 15th yesterday with no stage points, much like Brad Keselowski. So I had to move him back because the only 2 guys, I guess, technically that moved ahead of him, but he also moved ahead of Brad. So the 2 guys that did move ahead of Harvick in the standings both had great days yesterday and have been more consistent than Harvick has in recent weeks. So Kevin Harvick drops back. And again, Harvick's still 6th on the power rankings on my list. You know, I click on Kevin Harvick. We look at his stats. He's still got 5 top 10s this year, 2 top 5s. So all but 2 starts, he's finished in the top 10 in the first 7 races. And he has no dirt racing experience outside of the truck race he ran this week. So definitely that was an easy choice. Again, easy choice for the bottom half of the list. The top half was definitely a lot tougher, but number 5, my man Ryan Blaney, he moves up 1 spot. So we have Blaney at 6 after winning at Atlanta, knowing he was locked into the playoffs. That was a big part of it. He continues that top 10 streak, now 4 top 10s in a row after not finishing better than 15th the first 3 races. That team has had a quick 180. I mean, we were talking Ryan Blaney at the start of the year of being, if he doesn't get a win, he might miss the playoffs the way he's running right now and the way all these different winners have. Now he's won a race. He's got 2 top 5s and 4 top 10s in the last 4 races. Obviously, that win as well. Ryan Blaney only ahead of Harvick because of that win. Obviously, he finished better than him last week, but if he wouldn't have had the win, he would have had 1 less top 10 still. Blaney does have a stage win as well because he did win a stage at Phoenix, so that is more than Harvick as well. So Blaney moves up 1 spot to number 5 this week. Martin Truex Jr. drops 1 spot, and this is where it got tough. The top 4 really got tough, but I had to shuffle around. Martin Truex Jr. moves back 1 spot. He had a great week. I really didn't want to move him back, but considering the guy I have ahead of him, there's a justifiable reason for it. And I'll get to that in a couple minutes when I get to that driver. Nathan Satan, welcome to the stream, yeet. Yeah, Martin Truex Jr. drops back to 4. Really no rival reason. I mean, Truex has had a great year and still in my championship 4. Like, if I had to pick who was going to make the championship 4 right now, I'd still say Truex is in that group because he's in the top 4. But he drops back 1 spot in the power rankings. Despite the fact, honestly, if he would have finished in the top 10 yesterday with how he ran, he probably would have been 3rd this week. But I don't know what happened on that last restart. I don't know if he had a tire going down. We still haven't really gotten the word of what happened. But he restarted in, 4th place. He was on the outside behind Hamlin. Yeah, so he restarted in 4th, and he just shot straight up the racetrack. I don't know why. Again, it looked like a tire might have gone down, but it looked like he might have kept it off the wall, but he ended up falling all the way back to 19th, which was last on the lead lap. So, I mean, Truex, he was in the top 5 all day until literally that overtime finish. If he ended up cutting the tire down, that definitely stinks because he would have likely had a top 5. That would have been his 3rd top 5 this season. He does have a win. He does have 1 stage win and 4 top 10s. That could have been 5 top 10s as well. So, I mean, we could be looking yesterday that if he would have ended up finishing where he ran the whole race, he would have had 3 top 5s and 5 top 10s on the year, which would have been the same amount of top 10s as Harvick, for instance, if you want to compare that. But he has 1 more win, and he would have had 1 more top 5. So, Definitely could have had him ahead of the next guy. Kyle Larson is number 3 on this list. Very disappointing. The whole weekend was for Larson, but again, these are strictly off the Cup race. He wrecked in the truck race. He wrecked in the Cup race. I know the Cup race wasn't his doing, but you still would have hoped Larson would have had a great day. Pick Truex and he cut a tire. Yeah, did he cut a tire? Yeah, that's what it looked like. So that's what I'm kind of assuming, but I don't know 100% if he cut a tire. Yeah, he would have had a better finish. That would have helped my fantasy team too. He still had a good day. But anyway, yeah, on Larson. So Larson's 3, and the only reason I have Larson ahead of Truex is because Truex finished outside the top 10 too. Really only finished, I mean, I was going to say he still finished 9 positions ahead of Larson, but when you consider the fact they were both outside the top 15, I really don't think he can weigh 9 position difference over the other at that point. Plus, considering how Larson finished that far behind him because he got in a wreck that wasn't his own doing. He was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. And he's had a lot of momentum going into it. Kyle Larson's stats versus Martin Truex Jr.'s this season as well. They're close in points right now. Truex is 1 spot ahead of Larson in points, but they're only 5 points apart from each other. So Truex is only 5 points ahead of Larson for 3rd. Kyle Larson still has 1 more top 10 than Martin Truex Jr. They both have 1 win. Larson also has 1 more top 5 than Martin Truex Jr. So he's got 1 more top 5, 1 more top 10, and he's got 2 more stage wins. So that's why I had to put Larson ahead. If Truex would have finished in the top 5, Truex would have been 3rd. It's tough to drop a guy a spot when he ran good the whole race and just didn't get the finish, but that's what it comes down to, is him not getting that finish yesterday. And then again, statistically, he's got 2 less stage wins, 1 less top 5, 1 less top 10, same amount of wins, 1. So Kyle Larson, 3rd on the list, but Larson was 2nd. He moves down 1 spot. The biggest gainer in the power rankings this week is Joey Logano. He moves all the way up to 2. Logano was 7th last week on the power rankings list, so he moves up 5 spots. Why did Joey Logano move up 5 spots? Well, he won. Not just the fact that he won the race. For one, he got a stage win. That was the 2nd stage win of the season. So that gives him 1 more stage win than Truex. He does have 1 less stage win than Kyle Larson. He's got the same amount of top 5s now than Kyle Larson, and obviously the same amount of wins. The only place Larson beats him is 1 stage win and 1 top 10. But again, Larson, with that disappointing finish versus Logano's, it's just not there. Also, Logano jumped Larson in the points standing, so you got to consider that. Logano came into the week 4th in the point standings. He moves up to 2nd. Larson dropped from 2nd to 4th, and then Truex stayed stagnant in 3rd. The 2 guys around him just swapped. And not only Logano's ahead of Larson in points now, but he's actually got a decent gap on him too. He's actually 25 points. I did my math wrong. 27 points ahead of Kyle Larson. So he's 27 points ahead of Larson. So that's the difference there, and he won the race. The most recent race, which that's kind of how power rankings work. You know, we literally adjust this on a weekly basis because it's the eye test and how our guys doing right now. And Logano's had a good season. I mean, I know coulda, woulda, shoulda. The eye test, again, you go and look into it. And I guess you could say the same for Larson. Both of those drivers have had a chance to win 3 races this season. I mean, they really have. Logano, was so close to winning the Daytona 500 and the Daytona Road Course. Then he kind of was quiet but still good after that. And then ended up, he's gotten 3 top 10s since the Daytona Road Course. And I would have said 2 weeks ago that Logano was the 3rd Penske, especially after Atlanta last week. I think I did say that he was the 3rd best Penske guy, but Keselowski, he's had 2 finishes of 11th or worse now, and Logano all of a sudden has gotten not only a win, but a stage win to go along with it, and he jumps up to 2nd in points. And Keselowski's 5th in points, so he faded again. That's why Keselowski dropped in the power rankings a little bit. So that leaves number 1, which I kind of spoiled it earlier. Denny Hamlin's number 1 on the power rankings list again. Another strong run. Had a chance to win it late, didn't. That's kind of been the story of Denny Hamlin's season. He's been close. Denny Hamlin's got 6 top 5s, guys. 6 top 5s, 6 top 10s, 3 stage wins as well. It was really close. So last week on the power rankings, I had Hamlin 1, Larson 2, and I was so close to putting Larson above. And the only reason I had Denny Hamlin above is because he had 2 more top 5s, and he was the points leader. That gives 15 playoff points. Hamlin is still the points leader, and because Larson was second in points and had such a bad day, and Hamlin scored 16 stage points total and finished third, Denny Hamlin not only stays number 1, but I think he's edged that gap not only over Larson, but with Logano jumping to second on my power rankings. I think Hamlin went from like number 1 and Larson here to Larson dropping, and Hamlin moved up a little bit. And then Logano kind of jumps somewhere in the middle of there. And Truex jumps like right in the middle. So Hamlin on my power rankings list, that's kind of like how I'm looking at it right now. It's going to be tough for Hamlin to not be number 1 after next week's race. And we go to Martinsville, another place where Hamlin's had a lot of success. He didn't run there well in both races last season. So, maybe if that's a trend going forward, then maybe we consider dropping him. But it's going to be really tough to drop Denny Hamlin for number 1 in the power rankings, at least for the next race. But, Denny Hamlin. Denny Hamlin is number 1 on the power rankings list. And not only he is still the points leader, he went in 42 points ahead of second place in points. Now that Larson dropped back, we have a new second place points getter, Joey Logano. Denny Hamlin's 58 points ahead of second in the standings. Again, 15 playoff points, go to the regular season champ. And Denny Hamlin has almost a full race. He's got a full race on third. He's 80 points ahead of Truex in third. He's 85 ahead of Larson in fourth. This is after 7 races. Again, it's not like this is halfway through the season and he's got a 58 point. This is after 7 races. Usually this early in the season, the points are still so stacked on each other. Yes, we're having a lot of different winners, but as far as like the overall point standings, Denny Hamlin's pulling away right now. 58 point lead after 7 races. That's insane. So Hamlin was hands down going to be number 1 this week. But as far as like 2nd through 4th goes, that was really tough for me to pick. Well, 2nd through 5th, really, if you want to throw Brad being 5th in the mix there. But really, 2nd through 4th or 5th, that was tough for me to pick this week. Trevor Grimes, Joey. Yeah, Logano, number 2 on the list. But, I mean, realistically, if you look at it, the regular season standings, the top 5 are my top 5 in power rankings. It's just not the right order. The top 2 are in the right order, and then I have Truex and Larson flip-flopped, and Keselowski fits, so. And the eye test is the only thing that puts Larson over Truex. I mean, they've been honestly, Truex and Larson have had virtually the same season. The only difference is Larson's got that one extra top 5, which was a top 5 run at, I guess it would technically be the Homestead race that Truex didn't finish in the top 5, but Larson did. So that's really the only difference in stats between the two. And Larson, again, has 2 more stage wins. But, all right, that's enough of the power rankings. And that's really enough of this video. Again, we usually go right around an hour. This one was about an hour. What? Hour and 3 minutes, hour and 4 minutes we're in? Again, our hour podcasts are every race day. Scheduled race day. If it rains out, we'll probably still do the prediction stream on the original day of the race. But then we'll just end up having to obviously do the post-race stream another day, not on a Monday. But usually it's race day and then Mondays at 5, or I guess because Martinsville is going to be a night race, it's the day after. So again, race day will be the predictions, usually a couple hours before the drop of the green flag, and then on the day after the race is going to be the next podcast where we review everything that happened, not only in the race, but again, my power rankings for the week, and of course the fantasy, because it's a NASCAR fantasy podcast. So we did all that. That's pretty much what we do on a weekly basis, as well as keeping up with the chat. If you guys had any questions, answered a couple of them on there. You guys had a couple good questions. Thanks everybody for watching. Like, share, and subscribe for more daily NASCAR content. We are not done streaming here today. This is the time for me to promote what is going on tonight. At 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we will go racing on NASCAR Heat 5 at the Las Vegas Motor Speedway for the Gander Outdoor Truck Series for our career mode. It is the, first race of the round of 8. So yes, tune in. We're going to decide who will be the first driver to clinch a spot in the Championship 4, assuming one of those 8 win, which I think there's a really good shot of that happening. So first race of the round of 8, and not only that, tonight is a double-header race. So that means we're running Talladega after Vegas tonight. So we're going back-to-back. We're running Vegas at 8, and then probably within like 10 minutes, probably about 10 minutes after the first race, we will run Talladega as well. So tune in for that. We'll do the first 2 races of the round of 8. A lot of playoff drama is going to be on the line. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens at Vegas. And it's going to be so hard at Talladega, not only trying to get the win, but trying to get as many points as you can. If you can't get a win in either one of the first 2 races, and really set yourself up for Martinsville, which is the final race of the round of 8. So that'll be a lot of fun. Again, NASCAR Heat 5 career mode. And it's for the Truck Series. Again, coverage starts at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time tonight. We do full race live streams with a realistic broadcast every day for both the Martinsville is on Saturday, ? For Cup. Yes, it's a night race, just like they did last year. But last year was middle of the week only because of COVID. But it was originally scheduled for Saturday night, so they're doing that again this year with fans this time. So Saturday night, they will be running the Martinsville Cup race. Not this Saturday, but the following Saturday. Again, they're off for Easter. They're always off for Easter, so it'll be not this week, but next week. So I guess it'll be a couple weeks for the next podcast episode. But yeah, that's going to wrap it up. Again, like, share, and subscribe for more daily NASCAR content. I will see you guys in a little less than an hour. Thanks for watching.